Okay, so have you ever really stopped to think about this? Where does seeing something actually stop and thinking about it begin? It feels like it's all one smooth process, right? But what if it's not? What if there's a hard line, a real border right there in your own mind? I mean, it seems so simple, doesn't it? You look at an apple and your brain just knows it's an apple. Easy. But what if that whole seamless experience is just a kind of grand illusion, a clever trick your mind's playing? What if there's this huge divide hiding right out in the open?
So, to really dig into this, we've got to ask the big question. Is that incredibly rich, detailed world you see with your eyes the same thing as the world you actually think about? Or are we talking about two totally separate things happening in your brain? Let's kick things off with a bit of a puzzle.
Okay, get this. It's a really fascinating neurological puzzle. There are some people with a condition, it's called visual agnosia, who can look at a face and see every single part of it perfectly. The eyes, the nose, the mouth. They can describe all the lines, the shapes, the colors in amazing detail, but they have absolutely no idea that they're looking at a face. They can see it, but they can't know what it is. And right there, that's our first big clue that maybe, just maybe, seeing and thinking are not the same thing at all.
Yeah, and this exact puzzle is what led the philosopher Ned Block to a really powerful idea. He proposed that there's what he calls a joint in nature, a clean break between perception and cognition. Think of it like the seam in a shirt. The sleeve and the body are connected for sure, but they are fundamentally different pieces of fabric. So our mission today, we're going to go find that seam.
All right, clue number one, and it's a biggie. It all comes down to the format. It's almost like seeing and thinking are speaking two completely different languages. So here's the fundamental difference. Perception is what we call iconic. It's like a picture. It's incredibly rich. It's detailed. Cognition, on the other hand, that's discursive. It's more like language. It's built out of concepts, propositions, logical statements. But the real kicker? Look at that capacity difference. Perception is like a giant fire hose of information just blasting away. And you're thinking? Well, it can only handle a tiny little trickle of that data, like trying to drink from that fire hose with a straw. Seriously, think about it like this. Right now, your eyes are feeding your brain this massive, high-res, live camera feed of the world. But your actual thoughts about what you're seeing, they're more like a quick text-based summary of that feed. A live video feed and a written report. Those are two totally different things, right? Okay, so our second clue comes from looking at what happens when when they go wrong inside the brain. It's pretty amazing, actually. Sometimes brain damage can slice one system apart so cleanly while leaving another one totally untouched. And when that happens, it reveals those hidden seams we're looking for. And this is where it gets really, really weird. Take someone with that condition called associative agnosia. You can show them a picture of, say, a dog, and they can copy it perfectly, line for line. Their visual system, that iconic picture-like part, it's working just fine. But then you ask them, so what did you just draw? And they have no clue. Zero. The connection between the picture of the dog and the concept of a dog is just gone, completely severed. A neurologist named Hans Lucas Tuber had the perfect way to describe this. He said the patients have percepts stripped of their meaning. They get the raw visual experience, the percept, but all the meaning has just been peeled away. The picture is there, but the mental label, poof, gone. And here's the bottom line, the really crucial takeaway from this. If seeing and thinking were just one big, smooth system, you shouldn't be able to break one part so cleanly without wrecking the other, right? So agnosia is just this incredibly powerful piece of evidence that they are, in fact, two separate systems. Okay, on to our final clue. And this one brings us back to something we mentioned earlier, capacity. There was this really clever experiment that reveals the just staggering difference between what our eyes take in and what our minds can actually grab and hold on to. So put yourself in this experiment for a second. You're sitting there and you get shown a display like this one, but only for a fraction of a second. Then poof, it's gone. A moment later, a little pointer shows up, pointing to one of the spots where a rectangle used to be. Your job is to remember which way that rectangle was tilted. Now, the whole trick to this experiment is when that pointer appears. And the results? They're pretty incredible. See, when the pointer showed up a little later, people had to use their regular cognitive working memory, their mental scratch pad. And on average, they could only remember about 4 of the rectangles. But when that pointer appeared almost instantly after the image vanished, they could tap into this other, much richer, fragile visual memory. and they could recall almost double that amount.
So the takeaway here is just, it's undeniable. For a split second, your perception holds this incredibly rich, high-capacity snapshot of the world. But only a tiny fraction of that information can ever squeeze through the narrow bottleneck into your conscious thoughts. Okay, so we've gathered our clues. What does it all add up to? Let's put all the pieces together and finally see the big picture, that border between seeing and thinking.
Let's recap the evidence. We've got 3 huge clues. 1. The formats are totally different. Perception is like a picture, cognition is like a sentence. 2. Brain damage can break one system completely while leaving the other one just fine. And 3. The amount of information perception can handle just dwarfs what cognition can. So, all the evidence is pointing in one direction. That joint in nature that Ned Block talked about, it's real. Seeing isn't just the first step of thinking. It's a completely different kind of process, probably running on different neural hardware, playing by totally different rules. They really are 2 separate systems. And look, this isn't just some abstract philosophical idea. This Great Divide has massive implications. It actually challenges some of the biggest scientific theories of consciousness, like the global workspace theory. That theory basically says whatever we're conscious of gets broadcast to this one central workspace in the mind. But if perception and cognition are truly separate, how in the world do they combine to give us this smooth, seamless experience of reality that we all have? That is a huge, huge open question.
Which leaves us with one last, kind of startling thought to chew on. If your visual system is constantly taking in this amazingly rich picture of the world around you, but your conscious mind can only ever grab a handful of items from that fire hose of data, just think about how much you're missing right now. How much of the rich reality all around you is just flowing right past, totally unnoticed, lost forever in that gap between seeing and thinking.